On December 15, 2007, what should have been a peaceful evening in Jacksonville, North Carolina, turned into the beginning of a crime that shocked both the military and the nation. At the center of it all was Cesar Armando Lorien, a U.S. Marine who was once seen as a dedicated serviceman. But behind the uniform, Lorien was hiding dark secrets that would end in murder, betrayal, and international scandal. His victim was Lance C. Pell, Maria Lauterbach, a 20-year-old Marine who was 7 months pregnant. Just months earlier, Lauterbach had accused Lorien of rape, a charge that threatened to derail his military career and reputation. When Maria suddenly went missing, suspicion quickly turned toward Lorien. Weeks later, investigators made a horrifying discovery: Maria's burned remains along with her unborn child buried in Lorien's backyard. The crime set off an international manhunt after Lorien fled to Mexico, sparking outrage and fear within the military community. The investigation revealed chilling details. Lorien had bludgeoned Lauterbach to death with a crowbar, attempted to cover up the crime by burning her body, and then went on the run. His capture in 2008 ended months of searching, but the damage was already done. The murder exposed not only Lorien's brutality, but also deeper issues within the Marine Corps, including questions about how sexual assault cases were handled and the protection of vulnerable service members. In this video, we uncover the shocking case of Cesar Lorien from Marine to murderer. We'll look at the crime, the international manhunt, and the trial that ended with Lorien sentenced to life in prison without parole. This is the disturbing true crime story of a Marine who betrayed everything the Corps stands for, leaving behind a legacy of tragedy and outrage. Classification: murderer characteristics, rape, Marine. Number of victims, 1 date of murder, December 15, 2007. Date of arrest, April 10, 2008. Date of birth, November 13, 1986. Victim profile: Lance Corporal Maria Frances Lauterbach, 20. 7 months pregnant. Method of murder: beating with a crowbar. Location: Jacksonville, North Carolina, USA. Status: sentenced to life in prison without parole on August 23, 2000, August 24, 2000. Goldsboro, NC. A former Marine has been sentenced to life in prison after a jury convicted him of murder in the death of a pregnant colleague who had accused him of rape, an allegation that threatened to derail a military career that had earned him promotions and praise. Cesar Lorien, 23, of Las Vegas, was found guilty Monday of killing Lance C. Pell. Maria Lauterbach, 20, of Vandalia, Ohio, in December 2007. The two were assigned to the same logistics unit at Camp Lejeune, the base in Jacksonville, NC, that is home to about 50,000 Marines. The trial was moved because of extensive pre-trial publicity. The former Marine corporal was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder. Defense lawyer Dick McNeil told the court Lorien would appeal his conviction. Before the judge imposed the sentence, the victim's mother, Mary Lauterbach, read a tearful statement. She told Lorien to remember the pain in his mother's face and to think of the daughter who will have to live with the shame of a father who is a killer. "Now you will have time to think about your shame, time to think about your failures," Mary Lauterbach said. There are many people out there who will die today, people who would love to have the time that God has given you." One juror said the panel didn't believe the theory McNeil presented, that someone else, perhaps Lorien's enraged wife, could have killed Lauterbach with a single swing of a crowbar that fractured her skull. The jury of 7 women and 5 men deliberated for 3 hours Monday before convicting Lorien. The thought entered our minds, but everything pointed to the fact that he is the one who did this crime, juror Brenda Peters said. "We went back over every speck of evidence that there was, piece by piece. That's how we reached our verdict." Neither Lorien nor his wife testified during the trial. Lorien's father, Salvador, and sister Blanca said they wished more of the testimony would have explained the problems the ex-Marine had with Lauterbach, whom the higher-ranking Lorien was ordered by superiors to help shape up. "He's a nice guy," Blanca Lorien said. "He doesn't deserve everyone thinking he's the worst man in the world. He's not." Lorien also faced 3 other charges of robbing Lauterbach of her bank ATM card and of theft and attempted fraud for allegedly trying to use it to withdraw cash. He was found not guilty of the robbery charge, but Lorien was convicted on the fraud and theft charges. Lauterbach's rape accusation never was corroborated, but a Marine buddy testified. Lorien told him the sex was consensual. A DNA test would prove later that Lorien was not the father of Lauterbach's child. She was 7 months pregnant when she died. Even if the rape accusation was false, the married father of a young child faced having his career derailed for committing adultery with a subordinate district attorney, Dewey Hudson said. Lorien had already faced an order to stay away from Lauterbach, and his Marine superiors said a hearing on the rape allegation was approaching. He was a married man. He was her boss. He had sex with her, Hudson told jurors in his closing argument. "He's damned if he does or damned if he don't." Lorien, who was born in Mexico, fled his home and was on the run until police arrested him in April 2009 in the Mexican municipality of Tacambaro. Prosecutors agreed not to seek the death penalty, so Mexican authorities would return Lorien, who was born in Guadalajara, to the U.S. Lorien was kicked out of the Marines after fleeing as investigators closed in. Testimony showed that hours before Lauterbach was last seen alive, she withdrew $700, left a note for her roommate, saying she was quitting the Marines, and bought a bus ticket to El Paso, Texas, on the Mexican border. Lauterbach told the ticket agent that her child was fathered by a fellow Marine she was barred from seeing, but she expected him to join her soon. The same Marine buddy, Lance Seapill Blake Costa, testified that Lorien told him he wanted to tell Lauterbach she could stay with his relatives in Mexico, where he would send her money and join her later. Lorien knew that once Lauterbach was declared a deserter, her already shaky credibility within their unit would be destroyed. He hoped he would be cleared to continue his career, Hudson said. Lauterbach's charred corpse was discovered nearly a month later in a hole under the fire pit Lorien built over the grave, prosecutors said. It almost worked. She bought the ticket, Hudson said. But something happened at his home that day, and then he used a second plan, and that was smashing in her head with a crowbar. Lance Corporal Maria Frances Lauterbach, November 17, 1987, December 2007 of Vandalia, Ohio, was a United States Marine who went missing from Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, North Carolina on December 14, 2007. At the time of her disappearance, Lauterbach was 8 months pregnant. Lauterbach grew up in Dayton, where she attended Butler High School, Vandalia, Ohio. Lauterbach joined the Marines on June 6, 2006. She was a personnel clerk assigned to Combat Logistics Regiment 27th 2nd Marine Logistics Group 2 Marine Expeditionary Force. Background and death. According to her adoptive mother, Mrs. Mary Lauterbach, LCPL, Lauterbach was preparing to testify that she was raped by a fellow Marine. Mrs. Lauterbach told police that her daughter claimed she had been raped by a senior Marine at her command and that the investigation had gone sour. According to an Associated Press report, her adoptive mother also told police that her daughter was bipolar and had a history of compulsive lying. Tony Harris of CNN reported on January 12, 2008, that Lauterbach never felt that her adoptive parents treated her as well as their natural children. Her adoptive mother reported her missing on December 19th, 5 days after their last conversation. Her cell phone was found on December 20th near the main gate at Camp Lejeune. Near the main authorities found the burned remains of Maria Lauterbach and her unborn child in a fire pit in Corporal Cesar Armando Lorien's backyard. They also found a large quantity of her blood in Lorien's house in Jacksonville, NC. Lorien has been reported as having tried to clean up the scene. During a press conference on January 11, 2008, Onslow County Sheriff Ed Brown reported the death of Lauterbach. Brown stated that authorities had gotten physical evidence of the woman's death that also linked Lorien to the death. Lorien claims in a note found by his wife that Maria Lauterbach committed suicide by cutting her own throat during an argument at the Lorien home. However, authorities found evidence that points to murder in the initial investigation. This is further supported by the autopsy results released in March 2008, which classified the neck wound as post-mortem and insufficient to causing death. The official cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Cesar Lorien, Marine Corporal Cesar Lorien, age Sahar Loit. Iun, the 21-year-old prime suspect in the case, was the man whom Lauterbach accused of sexually assaulting her. A federal warrant for unlawful flight to avoid prosecution was issued for his arrest on January 12, 2008. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Naval Criminal Investigative Service issued a wanted flyer on him. There was also a $25,000 reward offered by the FBI and $5,000 from the state of North Carolina for information leading to his capture. Onslow County has primary jurisdiction, but the Judge Advocate General's office may bring charges as well, to include, but not limited to, charges stemming from Lorien's deserter status. Shortly after the murder, the press reported that Lorien fled to Mexico, his country of birth. Mexican officials issued an arrest warrant for Lorien as a suspect of killing his pregnant colleague, a U.S. Embassy official said on January 29th in Mexico City. Interpol also issued an international wanted notice for Lorien. A cousin of the corporal informed reporters that the Marine visited family in the area of Guadalajara, Mexico in late January 2008, but left without saying where he was headed. America's Most Wanted featured the story on their April 5, 2008 episode. On April 10, 2008, the FBI announced that Cesar Lorien had been apprehended in Tacambaro, Michoacan, Mexico. The popular press indicated that his extradition might involve at least 2 years of legal proceedings, considering the relationship between the United States and Mexico. In September 2008, Onslow County District Attorney Dewey Hudson agreed not to seek the death penalty, and a Mexican judge agreed to extradite Lorien. However, in October 2008, Laurian launched another appeal to the Mexican courts to prevent his extradition, arguing that North Carolina's life without parole sentence for first-degree murder is not only barred under the country's extradition treaty, but is considered cruel and unusual punishment. In North Carolina, a person convicted of first-degree murder can only be sentenced to death or life without parole. On April 17, 2009, the FBI announced that Laurian had been extradited to the United States and was being held in the Onslow County Jail. In December, an Onslow County judge agreed that the trial should be moved to a different county due to the extensive media coverage on the case and scheduled it to begin on June 28, 2010. In January 2010, Wayne County was selected. In 2009, Mary Lauterbach filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Caesar and his wife Christina, accusing them of conspiring to conceal the murder. On August 24, 2010, Laurian was convicted of murder as well as theft and fraud charges relating to using Lauterbach's ATM card while on the lam and sentenced to life in prison. The jurors dismissed the defense's theory that Christina was in fact the real murderer, favoring the prosecution's argument that Laurian's desperation to save his career led to the incident. He initially conspired with her to run to Mexico, supposedly with the intent of destroying her credibility with the desertion and continue his career in the Corps, but reverted to killing her with a crowbar when that failed. North Carolina law enforcement officials took pains Friday to publicly applaud the work of Mexican law enforcement officials in the capture of fugitive Marine Cesar Armando Laurian, and to reassure that nation that he would be treated fairly if and when he is extradited to the United States. While Laurian's crime was horrible, to say the least, Cesar Laurian is not an animal. Onslow County, NC, Sheriff Ed Brown said at a Friday afternoon press conference, "He's a human and he's not a trophy. Laurian, when he comes back to the sheriff's office, will be treated just as any other inmate. He is not a high-profile inmate. He will be just like any other inmate housed in this Onslow County jail." Laurian has been on the lam since January after investigators said they found the charred remains of Lancey Sapla Maria Lauterbach and her unborn baby buried in Laurian's backyard. Lauterbach, who was 8 months pregnant, disappeared in December 2007. The discovery of her remains prompted authorities to file murder charges against Laurian. Laurian had been Lauterbach's senior officer at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina until she accused him of raping her. The Marines have said Laurian was never taken into custody because he had denied the charge, and there was no evidence to support the accusation. Death penalty still off the table. Onslow County District Attorney Dewey Hudson reiterated his promise to Mexican officials that he would not seek the death penalty if a jury convicted Laurian of murder. Referring to a decades-old treaty with Mexico that precludes officials there from turning over fugitives who would face capital punishment to U.S. authorities, Hudson said at the press conference that his office had reluctantly but firmly agreed to those conditions. Hudson said his office had reviewed the treaty very carefully and had come to the inescapable conclusion that the agreement was airtight. Depending on whether or not Cesar Laurian waives extradition, this process could take a few days or up to a couple years to occur. Dewey said he'll work closely with the U.S. Justice Department to facilitate Laurian's expedition's return to Jacksonville for trial. If convicted, Laurian would face a sentence of life in prison. The end of a manhunt. Laurian's arrest Thursday brought to close a massive 3-month international manhunt. North Carolina law enforcement officials indicated that U.S. authorities had been hot on Laurian's heels for some time. In the last couple of weeks, we developed specific information, and through a coordinated effort with the FBI NCIS Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and this office began to narrow down and focus the area where we suspected that Cesar Laurian was, Captain Rick Sutherland of the Onslow County Sheriff's Office said. Sutherland noted that the investigators were able to narrow our focus in the search for Laurian after they analyzed and substantiated information they received over the past couple of weeks that Laurian was reaching out and attempting to communicate with family members and persons located in this county. Questions about Christina Laurian. Amid questions about any cooperation Laurian's wife might have provided, Sutherland said that a number of questions have been raised about Christina Laurian, and our office has continued to repeat the fact that she was a cooperating witness with this investigation. That status has not changed. Pressed for further information on any investigation into Christina Laurian's activities, Hudson said, "Let me just say this. From all the evidence I reviewed, I feel confident saying that she is torn. She's torn between what occurred and her love for her husband. But authorities did say they don't believe she helped him while he was on the run." Cesar Laurian repeatedly asked for resources from family members, and those family members denied those resources. Specifically, Christina denied those requests, Sutherland said. Magdalena Guzman, a spokeswoman for the Michoacan, Mexico State Prosecutor's Office, said Thursday that Laurian told arresting authorities that he had only about 10 pesos, roughly $1, when he was captured, supporting the notion that Laurian's family had cut him off. Christina Laurian has remained silent on the events surrounding her husband's investigation. Christopher Welch, her attorney, explained that silence Friday, noting that she is also a Marine and that the Corps has prohibited her from speaking out about the case. During the course of the investigation, authorities said Christina Lorien, the mother of Caesar Lorien's toddler, handed over notes left by her husband, in which he allegedly claimed that Lauterbach had slit her own throat before he burned and buried her body. Sutherland added that if new information was developed that required new arrest warrants in the case, they would be issued. Lorien arrested in Mexico. A senior law enforcement official told ABC News that Mexican authorities arrested Lorien 21 Thursday evening in a town in the Mexican state of Michoacan after he was spotted on the street. Mexican police on an anti-kidnapping operation reportedly spotted Lorien wandering the street and became suspicious when they realized he didn't speak Spanish very well. He was taken into custody and later identified in part by his extensive tattoos, the Associated Press reported. He was walking down the street. He did not resist, said FBI spokeswoman Amy Thoresen. We had FBI agents, NCIS agents, as well as the Mexican authorities there at the time. The AP briefly interviewed Lorien Thursday night at the Michoacan State Attorney General's office in that state's capital city of Morelia. The reporter noted that a shackled Lorien teared up at times and appeared slightly disoriented. "You know my name, you know who I am?" the news service quoted a bearded Lorien as saying. Chained at the wrists and ankles, Lorien stared straight ahead as he answered a series of questions from an AP reporter. Asked whether he had anything he wanted to say, Lorien reportedly replied, "Proof?" Asked what he would do next, he asked, "Do I have a choice?" And "I don't know." Antonio Garza, U.S. ambassador to Mexico, confirmed in a statement that authorities had arrested Lorien in the town of Tacambaro, also in the Mexican state of Michoacan. In addition to the murder charges, authorities in Onslow County, NC, filed against Lorien the day after they say they recovered Lauterbach's remains. Federal officials charged Lorien with unlawful flight to avoid prosecution and issued an additional warrant for his arrest. Officials believe Lorien fled North Carolina during the early morning hours of the day investigators discovered Lauterbach's remains. Investigators traced Lorien to Mexico after discovering he had ridden a bus there just hours before they launched an intense manhunt. Sources familiar with the probe had previously told ABC News that Lorien boarded a bus in Raleigh-Durham, NC, and then rode to Houston. In Houston, he allegedly boarded another bus and then traveled to San Luis Potosi, a state in central Mexico. Sources say U.S. authorities tracked his general location by triangulating cell phone and other electronic communications. Lorien was born in Mexico but became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 2003. It's not known whether he retained his Mexican citizenship, although investigators have said that he has family in Mexico. As of Friday, authorities are holding Lorien in Mexico City. Extradition proceedings will follow their normal course. Mexican ambassador to the United States, Arturo Saracon, said in a statement to ABC News. But the arrest underscores Mexico's commitment with the rule of law and to fully cooperate with the United States on all law enforcement issues. It highlights our strong determination to make Mexican territory an ill-fitted choice for any fugitive seeking a safe haven from justice, the statement continued. The house. Local, state, federal, and military investigators worked with Interpol, and the Mexican government coordinated the manhunt. The FBI and its law enforcement partners brought to bear all of our domestic and international resources to find a man wanted for murder. Lorien's swift arrest in Mexico was due to the diligence and dedication of the Mexican government and our law enforcement partners. Nathan Gray, the FBI special agent in charge, said in a statement released Thursday. An attorney for Lauterbach's family said the victim's mother received a call from the FBI confirming the capture around 9 p.m. Thursday. She's been living with CPL, Lorien being on the run and then living without an expectation that he was going to be captured anytime soon. So when the word came, it really caught her by surprise, and she's still trying to let it all sink in. Family lawyer Merle Wilberding told WDTN-TV in Dayton, Ohio. Pregnant Marine murdered in North Carolina. Prosecutors said they will not seek the death penalty against Marine CPL Caesar Lorien, who is suspected of killing a 20-year-old pregnant colleague, but only if he is arrested in Mexico. A grand jury delivered an indictment against Marine CPL Caesar Lorien on a charge of first-degree murder in the death of Lance Cipala Maria Lauterbach, who had once accused him of rape. Her remains, along with the remains of her unborn child, were found in a fire pit in Lorien's North Carolina backyard. Authorities believe Lorien has fled to his native Mexico, which refuses to send anyone back to the United States unless they are provided with assurances they won't face the death penalty. This agreement to not seek the death penalty applies only if he is arrested in and extradited from Mexico, Onslow County, NC District Attorney Dewey Hudson said. Earlier, a man identified as his cousin said Lorien walked into his liquor store in Guadalajara, Mexico, but left without saying where he was headed. Hudson said the grand jury also indicted Lorien with robbery with a dangerous weapon and a charge involving an unauthorized financial transaction involving card theft. But because authorities have determined that Maria's child had not been born at the time of her death, Hudson said prosecutors are only allowed under North Carolina to charge Lorien with a single count of murder. Before Lorien fled from Jacksonville in early January, he left a note for his wife Christina that said Maria slit her own throat with a knife and he then buried her in the woods near their home. Detectives have rejected that claim, and an autopsy found that Maria died of blunt force trauma to the head. Pickup truck recovered. Authorities have said Lorien's wife, Christina Lorien, is cooperating with authorities and provided them with the note her husband left before skipping town. In that note, he said Maria committed suicide by cutting her own throat. Authorities have rejected that claim, and autopsy results released Tuesday found she died of traumatic head injury due to blunt force trauma. Autopsy reports showed that there was a superficial 4-inch wound to the left side of Maria's neck, but that Lorien might have made the cut there himself after her death to corroborate his story. The medical examiner is still conducting an autopsy on Maria's child, who Maria's parents said was a baby boy named Gabriel Joseph, to determine the child's paternity. Cops believe the baby died in utero. Beneath the bodies of Maria and Gabriel was a bag of baby clothes. Maria alleged in May 2007 that Lorien had raped her in March and April of that year. A pregnancy test soon after was negative, according to Marine Corps officials, but a test in June was positive. Doctors estimated the date of conception at May 14th. Corps officials said Maria met with prosecutors in November 2007 and said she no longer believed Lorien was the father. They said her regimental commander was intent on taking the case to an Article 32, hearing the military equivalent of a grand jury proceeding. Colonel Gary Sokolowski, the judge, Advocate General Officer for the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force, said that Lorien denied having any sexual contact with Lauterbach. He also did not violate a military protective order directing him to stay away from Lauterbach and continued to report for work on time in the weeks after her disappearance, he said. At no time did she indicate that she was threatened by Sepal Lorien, Sokolowski said. When she was asked if she felt threatened by Sepal Lorien, she said she did not feel threatened. Timeline of events. At a press conference, January 15, 2008, Lieutenant Colonel Curtis Hill, the public affairs officer of the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force at Camp Lejeune, NC, released the following timeline of events related to the disappearance and murder of Lanceslaus Maria Lauterbach. May 11, 2007, Lanceslaus Maria Lauterbach reports 2 encounters of a sexual nature with Sepal Lorien to her supervisor. She reported that the first encounter occurred on March 26th, the second about 2 weeks later. At that time, a pregnancy test was performed which came back negative. May 11th, Naval Criminal Investigative Service opens rape investigation. May 12th. Verbal order issued barring contact or communication between Lorien and Maria. Maria moved to another building across the base from Lorien. May 21st, written order issued barring contact or communication between Maria and Lorien. June 19th, June 24th, Maria takes annual leave home to Ohio. June 27th, Maria goes to a doctor feeling sick. A pregnancy test was performed which came back positive. 8th. Doctors estimate the date of conception to be May 14th. Over the summer months, Maria and Lorien each take leave time and return to the base as scheduled. September 17th, Maria requests permission to move into off-base housing to care for her baby. Her request was approved on October 31. October 18th, NCIS recommends that no disciplinary action be taken until evidence can be taken from the child. October 22nd, witnesses questioned in rape investigation. November 5th, Maria moves off base into home with Sergeant Durham, who planned to leave North Carolina in December for training in California. Maria planned to sublet the home in his absence. The same day, a trial counsel re-interviews Maria, at which time she adjusts her statement to say that her pregnancy was not the result of a sexual assault. November 26th, trial counsel discusses what possible charges, if any, would be filed against Lorien. Maria attends her last doctor's appointment. December 14th, Maria reported to work. Her workday ended at noon for a Christmas party, which she did not attend. Sergeant Durham returned to their home and says he finds a note from Maria that expressed her desire to leave the Marine Corps. Sergeant Durham said her car was gone and some personal items were taken. Marine Command determined that Maria had gone UA. Investigators find that Maria withdrew $700 from a Jacksonville NC ATM and bought a Greyhound bus ticket to El Paso. December 19th, Maria fails to report to work. Sergeant Durham gives commanders Maria's note. Command sends investigators to her house and reports that her car and her things were gone. She's listed as a deserter because of concern over her health. December 19th. Command calls Maria's mother, who she says she last spoke with her daughter on December 14. Maria's mother says she doesn't know where Maria is. Her mom files a missing persons report in Ohio. Maria's cell phone is found along Y-24 when a stranded motorist uses the phone to call Maria's sister. She asks the person to turn the phone into police. December 24th, an unidentified man withdraws $400 from Maria's bank account at an ATM in Jacksonville, NC. December 26, Maria misses an appointment with her obstetrician. January 7, 2008. NCIS finally learns about the cell phone's discovery of the ATM withdrawals and the Greyhound bus ticket. Up to this point, they still thought Maria was UA. Lorien is questioned as possible witness to Maria's disappearance, but not as a suspect. Lorien asks to leave work to meet with his civilian attorneys. Command doesn't see anything unusual with this given the status of the rape investigation. January 8th. The protective order between Lorien and Maria is reissued. It's learned that the order of protection had lapsed between December 24 and Jan 7 due to an administrative oversight. January 11th. Lorien doesn't report to work and commanders are unable to get in contact with him by phone. He is presumed to be UA. Onslow County Sheriff's Office holds press conference announcing they believe Maria is dead and buried in Onslow County, and Lorien is considered a person of interest. Lorien's wife gives authorities a note from Lorien stating that Maria had taken her own life. This was deemed to be impossible. Boom! Lorien busted in Mexico. April 10, 2008. A Marine wanted in the brutal slaying of a pregnant colleague who had accused him of rape was arrested in Mexico, the FBI said late Thursday. The FBI's office in Charlotte said special agents and Mexican authorities arrested Marine CPL Cesar Lorien, who is charged with murder in the death of Marine Lance CPL. Maria Lauterbach. The FBI did not say when or where in Mexico Lorien was arrested, but said he is awaiting extradition to the U.S. Lorien's swift arrest in Mexico was due to the diligence and dedication of the Mexican government and our law enforcement partners, Nathan Gray, the special agent in charge of the FBI's Charlotte office, said in a statement. This was truly an international effort, and we will do all we can to ensure Lorien is brought back to Onslow County, NC as quickly as possible to answer the charges against him. Onslow County District Attorney Dewey Hudson said, after Lorien's arrest was announced that it could be a year or two before authorities can bring the personnel clerk back to North Carolina if he decides to fight the extradition process. The extradition process is one where you have a right to appeal, Hudson told the Associated Press. I have no idea whether he would waive extradition. AMW.com. Scenes from a pregnant Marine's murder. Other images show fugitive Marine using victim's ATM card buying suspicious supplies. By David Schotz, ABC News. Jan 22, 2008. The most haunting image shows a man-made fire pit square in shape and enclosed by 12 concrete cinder blocks, a spot where investigators made a gruesome discovery last month. The photo is part of a group of images released Monday night by officials looking for CPO, Cesar Lorien, a missing Marine who police think killed another Marine who had accused him of rape. Police say they hope the images will help end a massive FBI manhunt for Lorien that has stretched from North Carolina across the United States and perhaps into Mexico where Lorien was born. The photos were taken during a police investigation at Lorien's home, after his wife confided to authorities that Lance Sipul Maria Lauterbach, a missing pregnant 20-year-old Marine who had accused her husband of rape at the Camp Lejeune military base, was dead and buried in their North Carolina backyard. Crime scene investigators began to slowly excavate the fire pit, and within 24 hours, Onslow County Sheriff's Office had released a grim statement confirming its initial suspicions. Charred human remains of an adult and a fetus were unearthed, the statement read. There appeared to be the bodies of an adult female with a fetus located near the abdomen region of the female. Authorities also released images from inside the Lorien house, including the garage where they believe the murder took place based on the blood and the interpretation of the blood spatters on the walls. The photos show a paint tray and 2-foot square patch of wall that has been repainted. An arrest warrant was issued for Lorien, but the 21-year-old who was raised in Nevada was already on the run, thanks to the 24 hours his wife had waited before she contacted police. Lorien is a naturalized U.S. citizen but may have retained his Mexican citizenship as well. Lorien reportedly had told fellow Marines in his unit that he would run to Mexico if he were found guilty by the military of raping Lauterbach. That's definitely a viable place he could be. Captain Rick Sutherland, the spokesman for the Onslow County Sheriff's Office, told ABC News. But Sutherland said that a high volume of tips have come in placing Lorien in the American Southwest and in states immediately surrounding North Carolina. Tips that come in of possible sightings outside of Onslow County are turned over to the FBI, Sutherland said. The FBI's Charlotte Bureau, Sutherland said, is serving as a clearinghouse for the search. We've received a number of tips that we believe are credible and worth following up on, Sutherland added. Lauterbach was killed at December 15 by some type of blunt trauma to the head, a state medical examiner determined. Last week, Onslow County Sheriff's Office authorities announced that a witness had turned in a weapon that may have been used in Lauterbach's death, but would not confirm reports the suspected murder weapon was a crowbar. This weekend, authorities teamed up with the TV show America's Most Wanted and showed surveillance footage of Lorien and an unidentified man entering and exiting a Lowe's home improvement store, once on December 16 and again on December 24. Lauterbach had been last seen December 14 and was reported missing by her family in her home state of Ohio, 19. In his shopping trips, Lorien purchased a wheelbarrow paint and concrete blocks like the ones used to ring the fire pit. Another image shows Lorien using Lauterbach's card at an ATM machine decked to number 24. It's a possibility that some of these items were used to cover up a crime, Sutherland said. Sutherland told ABC News that authorities have interviewed the friend seen in the Lowe's videotape 3 times and that he is considered a cooperating witness. Christine Lorien, the fugitive's wife and a former Marine, has also been called a cooperating witness, even though she waited almost a day before notifying authorities. Christine Lorien, the mother of the couple's 18-month-old, handed over notes left by her husband, in which he claimed that Lauterbach had slit her own throat before he burned and buried her body. Before he took off, Lorien told his wife that Lauterbach had demanded money from him so she could leave the area and that he bought her a bus ticket to El Paso, Texas, according to court documents released last week. Lauterbach's abandoned car was recovered at the bus stop, but the ticket to El Paso was never used. Physical evidence suggests that Lauterbach was planning to leave Jacksonville on her own. She had withdrew $700 from her bank account and packed personal belongings before leaving her off-base roommate with a note that read, "I could not take this Marine Corps life anymore, so I'm going away." Questions have also been raised about the status of the military's rape investigation and whether military investigators believed that the rape allegations from March and April may be unfounded. Marine Corps officials had said that Lauterbach told investigators in November that she no longer believed that Lorien was the father of the unborn child. Lorien had been Lauterbach's senior officer until she accused him of raping her. He was never taken into custody because he denied the charge and there was no evidence to support the accusation, Marine Corps officials said last week. The Marines first began searching for Lauterbach December 17 after she failed to show up for her job as a military personnel clerk. Mary Lauterbach, Maria's mother, told the Dayton Daily News in an interview published Sunday that questions about her daughter's credibility may have made her a vulnerable target in the events leading up to her death. Mary Lauterbach chided her daughter for waiting a month before reporting the rape to her commanders. "You realize you've lost all your evidence now," she recounted, asking her daughter in May. The mother reportedly had reason to question her daughter's credibility. She had to prove to Marines at Camp Lejeune that a story Maria Lauterbach had shared with fellow Marines about her father accidentally killing her brother when he was 6 years old was a lie. When the Onslow County Sheriff's Office asked Mary Lauterbach to write an email telling investigators everything she could about her daughter, she admitted that her daughter had problems with occasional compulsive lying, and that Maria Lauterbach's biological father may have suffered from bipolar disorder. Mary Lauterbach faced criticism when she made similar comments on Good Morning America, the day her pregnant daughter's remains were discovered. If Lorien is found in Mexico, Onslow County District Attorney Dewey Hudson will not be able to pursue the death penalty on the murder charge. According to the U.S. State Department, Mexico and the United States have a long-standing agreement not to seek extradition of suspects to face charges in the United States if they could face the death penalty. The case of Cesar Armando Lorien remains one of the darkest scandals in Marine Corps history. What began as a young woman's courageous decision to speak out against sexual assault ended in her brutal death. Maria Lauterbach and her unborn child were denied justice in life, but their story continues to echo as a reminder of the urgent need for accountability and protection within the military. Lorien will spend the rest of his life in prison, but the pain he caused can never truly be undone. What do you think? Was this murder driven purely by fear of exposure, or by something much darker within Lorien himself? If this case gripped, you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. And tell us in the comments, should the military have done more to protect Maria Lauterbach, or was this tragedy inevitable?